All right, everybody, thank you. Welcome to the May meeting of the San Luis Obispo County Tea Party. Wow, we got a lot of people here tonight. We have a very full agenda tonight, so we're going to get started right into it. Today, I'd like to just start with a prayer. We always start with a prayer. So who's going to do the prayer today? Frank? Frank is our resident prayer giver. He's been doing it so long, we believe he has like a special connection there. So, why don't you go ahead and come on in.
So I get to introduce a great friend of mine. Steve and I have been friends for a long time, ever since I got involved in politics. And he's been a mentor, he's been a guide, he's been a Yoda. And he is, if you ask in this state, who do you go to get information? Who do you go to if you need to find out if someone is really who they say they are? Steve Frank knows, and he's always known. So Steve also is the author of Political News and Views, which is a great, what do we call the blog or newsletter? Newsletter. And he's got the skinny on everything going on from LA down to San Diego, all the way up to Placer County up in Sacramento. He knows what's going on in every county, and he always keeps us all appraised. So Steve's going to come up, and he's going to talk to us for about half an hour. Then you're going to get to ask him questions. So without further ado, Steve Frank.
Wow. The last time I was here was in December of 2022. Of 2021, excuse me, 2021. And I've been here several times. And normally when people introduce me, they say all sorts of things. If my good friend Tom Del Beccaro was here to introduce me, he would say, Steve Frank has been around since before the Beatles.
That's true.
The Pests, not the singing group. If my good friend Celeste Gregg was introducing me, and she does it this way, Steve Frank knows where the bodies are buried, mainly because he buried them. Now, thanks to the Board of Supervisors of Ventura County, who 2 years ago appointed me as a member of the Board of Trustees of the Simi Historic Cemetery, I now have a place to bury the bodies. I know where the empty plots are. Now, I've been around a long time. I worked the first time walking precincts for Nixon for president in 1960. I was on Nixon for governor Speakers Bureau in 62. 64, I ran at Goldwater headquarters, worked with Youth for Reagan in 66, served in 1st Infantry Division in Vietnam, the Big Red 1. And by the way, the slogan of the 1st Infantry Division is the same slogan as the Democrat Party. And the slogan of the 1st Infantry Division is, if you're going to be one, be a big red one. Old right-wing joke from the 60s. I'm an old guy from the 60s. When I got involved in politics, I was told, never make it personal. Always talk about the issues in grand terms, the microcosm, not the micro. Never talk about people as individuals. Talk about them as masses. They were wrong. I believe we need to talk to people about issues on a personal level. You need to make it personal. Hubert Humphrey, and I apologize for that obscenity, but Hubert Humphrey said that cancer is fatal in 100% of the cases. But in the case of the individual, it's only 5%. I want to go to that 100%. We need to be talking to people on their level, on their issues that matter the most to them. Now, as Randall knows, and Jason and others that know me well, I am a pro-life, no exceptions Republican. The other day, I was talking to my good friend Dran Reese. We're working on the platform for the CRP, and I said something about we need to promote traditional marriage. And she got angry at me. It's not traditional marriage, it's natural marriage. I thought, oh, I think she's right. It is natural marriage. It is biblical. That's something that comes out of the air. But if we want to win in 2024, we're going to need to talk about those issues that face Americans on the precinct level. My mentor, a lady by the name of Lorelei Kinder, when I was on the board of the CRP, gave us all buttons to wear, and the buttons said, "Do it in the precincts." And she said, Ronald Reagan never won a statewide race. She ran the 13 western states in 1980 for Reagan, and she said Reagan never won a national race. But what he did do was win this precinct and that precinct and those precincts, and it looked like it. And so we need to be talking about those issues that are important to the people. And I believe there are 4 issues for 2024 that are key. The overriding issue is something that was taught to me years ago, that individuals need to be talking about those things that concern them. And what concerns them? Their kids and their pocketbook. Never mess with their kids, never mess with their pocketbooks. That will get them angry as hornets. And so the 4 issues, and I'll give them first, are immigration, education, crime, and the economy. And before I talk about those 4 issues, I want to talk about an issue that does not exist. I bet if you asked a city council member or a member of the Board of Supervisors, they will tell you they are doing all they can to meet and end the homeless crisis, right? There is no homeless crisis. There is no homeless crisis. But there is a mental illness crisis. There is a drug addiction crisis. There is an alcoholic crisis. If you solve the mental illness crisis, the drug addiction, the alcoholism, the so-called homeless issue goes away. So instead of helping grifters and corporate greedy people and elitist unions to get money, the more we spend, the more homeless there are. Why? Because you're not dealing with the issue. The issue is mentally ill. The issue is the alcoholics and the drug addicted. Get those handled, and you've handled the homeless crisis. Otherwise, all you're doing is making rich people richer, and a whole lot of headlines for the media. There's this study group, there's this nonprofit. Look behind those nonprofits. Look at the board of directors. Look at the money those board of directors donate to the politicians that then give the money from the city council, from the board of supervisors, from the state legislature, from the federal government to their nonprofit. This is about money, not about helping people. So I don't talk about the homeless, I talk about the mentally ill. And I think you need to understand that as a basis, because they're going to come to you. How can you not want to help the homeless? And the answer is, I want to help the mentally ill. I want to help the drug addicted, the alcoholics. Solve that, and you solve the so-called homeless crisis. So let's get to the 4 issues. The first one is immigration. The failed mayor of Chicago today almost cried on TV, begging the governor of Texas to say, don't send any more. We don't have any more room for them. We don't have any more money for them. As 30,000 illegal aliens come across the border into Texas every day, do you think Texas, as big as it is, has room for it? I was with my son-in-law yesterday, who isn't politically involved, and I said there are 2 dates you have to look for. May 1st, which is today, Hunter Biden gets creamed in court, and he did. But May 11th is the day America collapses. There'll be 100,000 illegal aliens on that day coming into our country. There's already 35,000 a day coming into portions of Texas every day. And until we handle the border, we haven't handled human sexual trafficking. We haven't handled the drug addiction, the fentanyl crisis, and the other issues that come across. There's a sad, sad story about an illegal alien. And by the way, you hear, even on Fox, you know, the migrant number of people. They aren't migrants. They are illegal aliens. In 1958, my parents moved from New York to California. They were migrants. They migrated from New York to California. We need to use the proper terms for the crimes being committed against us and our society. So on immigration, we need to stand up and show people that job you lost, an illegal alien took it. The taxes you pay, 15 to 20% go to illegal aliens. If I refuse to pay for health insurance, that should be my right. But the IRS will penalize me if I can't prove I have health insurance. On the other hand, if you're an illegal alien, you get health care free. 2 million in this state alone through Medicaid. 2 million illegal aliens. But you don't have health care, you get a fine from the federal government through the IRS. You are a victim of illegal aliens. Not even talking about the crimes. And of course, we saw the guy who murdered 5 people, been deported 4 times. And by the way, the people he killed were all illegal aliens themselves. Crime against illegal aliens. You would think Biden would be upset with that. You can't kill my illegal aliens. So we have a crime problem. 35% approximately of those in California prisons in 2018 were illegal aliens. We are paying for that. And then, of course, you have DAs like the Soros-owned Gascon in Los Angeles, Amanda Price in Alameda, who do nothing against the illegal aliens and are stopping their cities and counties from ending the so-called encampments. You know, we used to have Hoovervilles. In 1930-32, because of the Depression, veterans from World War I started putting up tents, and we called them Hoovervilles. So when I go to Hollywood or go to Fresno or Bakersfield, where some of us were last weekend, and see these encampments, these are Bidenvilles. We need to make it directly personal. He is responsible for those encampments of the homeless and the illegal aliens. And we need to call it that. Education is probably the most important issue facing us. So, what is the state going to do about having the lowest literacy rate in the whole nation? Lower than Mississippi, lower than Alabama, lower than Arkansas. California has the lowest literacy rate in the nation. Oh, at the same time, approximately statewide, every district is different. On any given day, there are 30% of the students who are truant. 30% don't show up. Let me define the word truant. Under state law, a truant is somebody that doesn't show up at least 10 days. 30%. LA Unified, 34%. That's a lot. We also know statewide, between 2 and 3% of the students drop out of government schools every year in California. So you have fewer students, you have 1/3 not showing up. The community colleges have lost 1/3 of their enrollment in the last 10 years. So what do? You don't have students in the community colleges. You don't have students in the K through 12 government schools. What do you do if you're state? Well, in California, you spend money. So on the 2024 ballot, you're going to have a $10 billion bond to give to school districts for the K through 12 and the community college. So they're going to spend more money as there are fewer students. But I lied to you when I said that bond is $10 billion. You know how I lied? Just like government lies to you. I didn't tell you you're also going to spend another $10 billion on interest charges. So that $10 billion bond is $20 billion. And I lied to you again. Because that money is going to be given to school districts. So Kenny, your school district is going to get the money. So let's say you get $5 million. In order for you to get $5 million in your school district is going to have to put up $5 million. You're going to have to match it. So that $20 billion now has turned out statewide to be $40 billion. They're selling it as a $10 billion deal on a declining enrollment and a failed school system. But don't worry, congratulations. There's a bill that's going through, led by Assemblyman Marinucci of Torrance, that over a 7-year period, is going to raise teacher pay by 50%. So you have failed schools, failed teachers getting paid more to do less. That's government schools in California. And we need to understand that the school systems need to be taken over by the parents in the community and taken away from the unions and the government. Because if you want failed schools, the government knows how to do it. The next issue is crime. It's not merely the crime that occurs, it is the fear of crime. And so as we have the defunding of the police, fewer cops, and we have DAs that say you can't arrest people, you have more crimes, but at the same time, the same politicians are saying you're not allowed to protect yourself with your Second Amendment rights. So more crime, less self-protection. That's a fascist society where the criminals run the streets. And if you go to Los Angeles, if you go to San Francisco, parts of Orange County, Oakland, the criminals run the streets. They are, as they call them in Michigan, no-go zones. People know where not to go because they want to be safe. And crime is a serious issue in every community, whether it's because of a DA that doesn't do their job or state law that allows people to steal $950 worth of goods and get away with it and not be punished at all. And as long as they go to the taco shop next door and take $900, then go to the nail shop, separate place, take another $900, they're within the law, they got $1,800, and no punishment at all. That's state law. And so, just last week, the Republicans in the legislature wanted to up the penalties for people who are dealing in fentanyl. And I'll tell you how bad that is. Okay. It failed because the Democrats refused to punish people dealing in fentanyl. So when you hear them say, oh, we need to control our borders and all, that's Joe Biden. And by the way, I identify myself as non-binary, just so you know. And Randall, I hate to break it to you, we've been friends a long time. In November 24th, I am voting for Joe Biden for president. I'm also going to vote for Fetterman for vice president. That's a no-brainer. I have to give you something to take away from this. The last issue is before I get to the last issue, the crime. There is a bill that's about to be passed that if you commit murder and you are sentenced to the death penalty, the legislature, the Democrats in the legislature, have redefined the term death penalty. The redefinition is 20 years in jail for the death penalty. There's a gentleman who committed a murder 38 years ago who is still on death row. The moment this bill passes, he gets let out of jail. But the bigger issue is on death row for 38 years? That's crazy. Criminals know they're not going to be punished to the full extent of the law. They laugh at us when we say that. And this guy is just waiting for the governor to sign that bill so he can get out. The last issue is that of the economy. Years ago, Phyllis Schlafly, who was a good friend of mine, used to say and told me that every dollar of taxation is a dollar less of freedom. Every dollar of taxation is a dollar less of freedom. She said, that's a dollar less you can contribute to your family, to your church, to your community, to yourself. Government takes it. And the economy is probably the most important part of the effort for 2024. Some people play pasture pool, that's golf. Others play tennis. My knees aren't that good anymore. So I like to go at about 1 o'clock in the afternoon to Stater Brothers, to the grocery store, every day, whether I need it or not. I like to grocery shop. And I was so proud of myself this last Friday. I got 18 eggs for $3.99 on sale at Stater Brothers. That's great. Well, it used to be $1.49 when Biden became president. I don't have to tell you about the price of gas. Every day, and we need to make it personal, when you meet people, one of the things I do in the grocery store, I get my cart, I'm going up and down the aisles looking for the bargain of the day, and I stop people. Do you know that you're paying twice as much for eggs as you did a year ago? Do you know that the price of bread, over 50% of it is taxes? You need to make it personal. You need to tell people what they're paying for. Most people just go, they have the list, they buy their stuff, they mumble under their breath how terrible the prices are, they go home and they'll watch reruns of Seinfeld and do nothing about it. So I'm glad you guys, because at 7 o'clock here in town, you have reruns of Seinfeld on DirecTV, and you could be there instead of here. So I'm glad you're here instead of watching Seinfeld. But the economy affects all of us. Wages, real wages, have gone down every month since Biden has become president. Inflation has gone up, and I just love last week, one of Biden's people said, well, you know, inflation is now down to 5% from 10%. The reporter should have said, yes, but Biden brought it up to 10%. He created the 10%. People need to confront those issues. So, my wife would say at this point, Steve, you tell them all this doom and gloom. What are you going to do about it? Now, there are several things you need to do. The first thing is to grow your club. You need to get others involved in the process, telling them if they don't, they pay more for eggs, more for gas. The job opportunities will dry up. Value of homes will go down. Here in California, we were lucky enough to have the miracle of the rain. Who knows what next year is going to bring, but we do know that the government has not built any water storage facilities in years in California, even though in 2016 we passed a bond measure of $5.3 billion. We haven't spent a dime of that to store the water, but we have protected the salmon. We have protected them. So we need to get others involved. This is not enough. And why? Voter registration. And Randall was right, that's the key to winning elections in 2024. You need to have voter registration. So I'm talking to a member of the board of the CRP, a long-term member. I won't mention his name, Sean Steele. And I said to Sean, you know, we need to register voters, lots of them. And Sean said, well, you know, Steve, there's no place where people with our beliefs congregate in the numbers needed to make it worthwhile, and going to Costco and to Vons or Safeway and retail stores and putting up a table, that really doesn't work anymore. I said, Sean, I could find you in any town, in this town, if we were in that Tuscadero, I bet I could find 200 to 250 people next Sunday going to church who are not registered to vote. So if I was going to do a voter registration, I'd make sure I had somebody at every church, especially the evangelical churches. In 2016, Craig Huey did a survey of churches in California, evangelical churches, and he found that 50% of those who were self-proclaimed evangelicals were not registered to vote. And in the 2016 election, 50% of those that were did not. So only 25% of evangelicals, self-proclaimed evangelicals, voted. If we had moved that up to 50%, we would have won much more. So there are places that we can go to with large number of people at a defined time, Sunday morning, to register voters. So no excuses. If I were doing a voter registration, I would pinpoint on a map every church in this county, and I would say, you, Grace Evangelical, Victory Evangelical. One by one, we pick them off. And every Sunday we have people there registering voters, where the people are. Second, in this county, even though it's part of my prepared speech, you guys do the right thing. You need to be involved in your county central committee. You need to make sure the county central committee represents Republican values, not power values and grifter values. You are one of 20 some odd counties that are Republican central committees. So I would continue that. The next one, and this is the time to do it, and your 60 days is about right, you need to start creating candidates for both legislative office as well as local office. So for legislative office, Assembly, State Senate, and Congress, those people should already been identified and beginning the process of organizing their campaign. That's what they should be doing. The local offices are the service districts, school boards, city councils, etc. You need to have candidates now. It will take you, except in extraordinary situations, 6 months to develop a team in your district to get you elected. That will take you literally to the end of the year. And then you start walking your precincts. And you walk. You do it in the precincts. And if you win enough precincts, you will win your election. But we need to start early. We can't wait till December 8th, the day before filing stops for legislative office, to say, okay, I'm running for assembly. Too late. And you can't wait till July or August when filing of 2024, when filing ends for that. Now, voter registration, I want to point something out. How many in here are either independents or Democrats, NPPs? Okay, you can't vote for president in 2024 in the primary. California has a lot of strange laws. If you want to vote for somebody for Assembly, State Senate, or Congress, or U.S. Senate, you can vote Republican, Democrat, Independent. But only Republicans can vote for president and for county central committee. So you have to be a Republican. If you want Trump, you got to be a Republican to vote for him in the Republican primary. And California is also weird in that we don't have a statewide election for president. Bet you thought we did. We don't. We have 52 elections, one for each congressional district. And so, if you want Trump to be the nominee in this congressional district, you have to work for him in this district in order to get the delegates to the national convention from this district to be his. We have strange laws. We have to follow them. No choice. The last thing, and I'll open up for questions after this. In 1988, Pat Buchanan ran for president of the United States. And he had no money. And a reporter asked him, well, you don't have any money. You do have a lot of volunteers. Now remember, 88 is before the explosion of the internet and cell phones. If anybody can remember that far back. So the question was, how are you going to communicate with your volunteers? And his response was, my volunteers already know what to do. I don't have to tell them. Everyone in this room knows what to do. Grow the club, get candidates, register voters, educate people on a personal level. We have the tools, now we have to use them. Thank you.
Questions? Have any questions out there?
Okay, we're gonna take some questions. Anybody got any questions? Oh, we got one right over here.
I must be an anomaly, but I like getting booths out there and seeing real people and real citizens, and you're saying that doesn't work anymore?
if you're looking to register voters, which is the goal, people who are going to Safeway or to Target, they want to get there, they want to go home. And we haven't seen across this state that those tables have become, have stayed as something where people, you get any large number of people to, and you have to be there 3, 4, 5 hours. Go to a church, half hour before, half hour after, and you get all the people.
How about both at Walmart? We had great success for, well, trying to get the governor out. We got lots of signatures.
You had a very particular issue with the recall of Newsom, where people were so angry about all the things he did. And if you remember what they did, oh, recall Newsom, they signed and they ran off. The problem with that was we needed those people who signed it to also volunteer to help get other people to sign it. And then when it got on the ballot, to get people to help us turn out the vote to recall. So the first step, really, I believe, you certainly can go to Walmart, Target, etc. But if you want large numbers in a small amount of time, and people who you know are ideologically and philosophically attuned to you, you go to the churches. I mean, you don't know if some Satanist or some evangelical at Target.
That's how they started the prohibition movement way back through the churches.
She makes a very good point that through the churches, the prohibition. But let me give you a history lesson that I keep telling my friend Dran Reese about. If you go to some churches, they will say, well, we don't want to get involved in politics. So where did that come from? It actually comes from the 1880s to 1900. There was an itinerant preacher who roamed the West, started hundreds of churches, and got others to start hundreds of churches throughout the West. And the theory of those churches were, you know, we are of the next world, not of this world. Therefore, it doesn't matter who's governor, president, or in charge. We are not going to get involved. And so there is that part of the philosophical basis of some churches that we do have to overcome. But interestingly enough, due to the COVID situation, all of those churches have now realized that if they don't want to get involved with government, they're closed. And even though COVID is over, if it ever started, we still have churches that are afraid. But most churches now understand that government controls them. They do not control the government. And only a few brave ministers throughout this state were willing to stay open and say, we don't listen, as the Hebrew National ad says, we listen to a higher authority.
Frank, also they're afraid to lose their tax exemption.
Yeah, and of course, Andrew's right, the fear of losing their tax exemption.
I said that.
Okay, are there any other questions?
Questions? Someone's got a question.
Okay.
Cindy's always got a question.
Okay, my question is, you didn't mention anything about election integrity. What are your thoughts on that?
It's an oxymoron in this state. There's no integrity in elections. The problem we have is that you have some legitimate groups, like in Election Integrity Project California, that have actually done the work. Then there are other groups that take your money, saying they're going to do it, and do nothing. As best I could tell, there's only one group in this state that has actually sued on election integrity. And your county, correct me if I'm wrong, Randall, is part of that lawsuit. And by the way, that's just one of their lawsuits, not all of them. It's just the one your county is involved with, and they do have others. There's a whole bunch of grifters out there with fancy names and saying, give us money, we believe in election integrity. So I always ask the question of them, who have you sued to get dead people off the ballot, off the voting rolls? None. Well, until you do that, you're a bunch of grifters. Do something with the money you steal.
Wait a second here. Camera girl.
You know, the world's on fire. You know, China is rattling sabers and everything else. They're getting stronger. We're getting weaker. We're throwing all of our assets into Ukraine. We're not replacing that stuff. Nobody seems to be worried about it. You know, we're close to World War III and nuclear war with those people. And nobody seems to worry about that. That seems to me that should be one of your 4 or 5 things that really scare. I guess they don't care.
The question was, how come I haven't talked about the Ukraine and our American military security? And that comes from a long, long history of elections, except in extremely rare circumstances, extremely rare. Foreign policy and national defense never makes the top 10. The reason for that is people, as I said at the very beginning, are concerned about their kids, their pocketbook, their jobs, their safety in their community. They look inward rather than looking outward. And so I agree with you that, in fact, our American military is no longer a quality military. It doesn't have the equipment to fight any war, much less the goal of the American military is to be able to fight 3 wars simultaneously. We can't even save the streets of Los Angeles or San Francisco. Amen. So we can't keep our borders safe. We have no borders in this country at this time. So I agree with you, but if I was looking for votes and I wanted to win an election, I would be talking about these issues, not foreign policy or national defense, unless asked. Because most people aren't concerned about that.
Steve, I have a question about your personal view on what's been going on with the Republican Party. We have seen a shift to away from the establishment and more towards the grassroots in a lot of counties and precincts and local areas. What do you see happening on the trajectory? What's the trajectory of the Republican Party right now?
If you're talking about the California Republican Party, I never talk evil of the dead. So the fact is that the Republican Party is alive and well on the county level and on the local level. You just ignore the grifters, the rhinos, the individuals that are looking for power, not victory, and not principle or values. And so what you've done here with San Luis Obispo Central Committee, what Fred Vanderhoff did in Fresno, Johanna did up in Yuba, I could go on and on of locals. Don't worry about the dead, worry about the living. And let's build up the local committees. True story. First time I ever went to a county central committee was in June of 1961. And that was the Los Angeles County Central Committee. And it was in downtown Los Angeles on 6th Street. It was right next to a small building where the FBI was. So you go into a building about this size, and that's where the LA County Central Committee was. Look at this corner here, this back room here. That's where the state Republican Party was. in that space. It was nothing until it started taking the money from the counties. And eventually they bankrupted the counties, forcing them to beg for money, Jim Brutti called it welfare, so they could continue to do the work of voter registration, candidate support, all the things that a party does. State party took over by controlling the purse strings. Now, it's taken a long time for us to do it. Randall and I don't know, Mary, if you were there at Marie Callender's by the La Brea Tar Pits in Los Angeles when we formed the Tea Party, the California Caucus. It's taken us all that time to not only build up the Tea Party and the conservative movement in the state, but to take over about 28 counties and we're building them up. And so don't worry about the grifters. Let them steal from one another. You do the job here.
Thank you, thank you. Any more questions?
Thank you, Steve.
Oh, good catch.